All right, today we are digging into a really controversial book that's been lighting up the internet, The Great Taking, written by a former hedge fund manager named David Rogers Webb. And let me tell you, it lays out a pretty startling idea about how our financial system really works. An idea that suggests everything you think you own, well, it might not actually be yours. Right out of the gate, from the prologue, the author just throws this down. He knows how wild his claims are, and he's almost daring you to just write it all off. This one sentence tells you we're about to dive into a theory that turns everything we assume about ownership completely on its head. So, what is this great taking all about? Let's get right into the book's main argument. Here it is, the core claim. The author's argument is that for decades, the legal and financial plumbing of the whole world has been quietly re-engineered. And the goal, he says, wasn't to stop a crisis. It was to create a system that could legally confiscate everybody's assets when that crisis finally hits.
Okay, so to even begin to wrap your head around this thesis, the book says you first have to understand a massive change in how we legally own things like stocks and bonds. Honestly, this concept is the absolute bedrock of the entire argument.
The whole thing really hinges on this difference right here. See, in the old days, you had direct ownership. You had a physical stock certificate, it was your property, like the title to your car. But today, the book argues, we're in a world of security entitlement. You don't actually own a specific share of Apple. What you have is a contractual IOU from your broker, a claim on a tiny piece of a giant, mixed-up pool of assets. So yeah, let's be super clear on this term. The book presents security entitlement as a game-changing shift. Your assets aren't your property anymore, not in the traditional sense. They're just a promise from your broker. And it's that little detail, the author claims, that becomes a very big deal if your broker ever gets into serious trouble.
To make this less abstract, the author uses this brilliant analogy. Imagine you walk into a dealership and buy a brand new car. You pay cash, it's all yours. But the dealer never actually gives you the title. Instead, they keep your car in a big lot with all the other cars they've sold. Then, and this is the crazy part, the dealer uses that whole lot of cars as collateral for their loans. So if the dealership goes bankrupt, its creditors, the big banks, can legally come in and take your car to pay off the dealer's debts.
So you might be thinking, okay, that's a scary story, but where's the proof? Well, the book doesn't just use analogies. It points to actual documents, like this 2006 exchange between a European Union legal group and the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. The Europeans asked a very simple, direct question. Does a person actually own specific shares in that big pool held by their broker? The New York Fed's answer, as the book highlights, was just one word, a very blunt, very clear no. The author holds this up as smoking gun proof that, legally, individual ownership is gone. And the fallout from that no is even worse. When they were asked if investors are protected if their broker goes under, the Fed's response says an investor is, quote, always vulnerable. And why? Because a secured creditor, like a huge bank that loaned money to the broker, gets first dibs. They have priority. This legally puts you, the investor, at the very back of the line. So then the book zooms out. It argues that this legal setup wasn't just some American thing. Nope. The claim is that this was part of a coordinated global push they called harmonization, and the whole point was to create one single unified plumbing system for all the world's assets. The book describes this global plumbing system for collateral. Think of it like this. Your stocks first get dumped into a local tank, a national CSD, like the DTCC here in the US. Then, that tank is connected by huge pipes to even bigger international tanks, the ICSDs, which mixes everyone's assets together into one giant global swimming pool. And all those pipes ultimately feed into these central hubs called CCPs, which basically control the flow for the whole system. So why on earth would they build this incredibly complex international system? Well, the author points to documents saying the goal was to create legal certainty. But the book asks the obvious question. Legal certainty for who? He argues it wasn't for you. It was to make absolutely sure that in a crisis, a small group of powerful creditors could grab assets from anywhere in the world, instantly, with no legal roadblocks. So, the legal groundwork is there. The global plumbing is all connected. But what's the trigger? What are the final pieces of the puzzle that the book claims will actually set off this great taking? The book zeroes in on this key legal tool called safe harbor. These are special rules in bankruptcy law that basically create a VIP section, a protected class of financial firms.
And this protection is like a legal get-out-of-jail-free card. It lets them jump the line in a bankruptcy and immediately grab collateral, and no judge can tell them to stop.
Now, this is a part of the argument that sounds totally backwards. Officially, central clearing parties, or CCPs, are supposed to reduce risk in the system. But the author alleges the exact opposite, that they've been intentionally designed to pull all the risk into one spot, turning them into the designated point of failure for the entire financial world when a big enough crisis hits.
To drive this point home, the book highlights how much money the DTCC, the group that clears the entire U.S. securities market, actually has on hand. In early 2023, its shareholder equity was just $3.5 billion. The author basically presents this number and says, look at it. It's a shockingly small amount to backstop the trillions of dollars in assets it's supposed to secure. In his view, it's pretty much designed to fail in a real meltdown.
So where does all this lead? All these legal changes, these global pipes, this concentration of risk, it all builds to the book's final and very grim prediction about what's coming next.
The book lays this all out as a step-by-step plan that's been unfolding for decades. It started with getting rid of paper stock certificates back in the 60s. Then came the huge legal change to the security entitlement in the 90s. After that, they created the Safe Harbor VIP Pass in 2005, and then connected the whole global system in the 2010s. In this telling, none of this was an accident. Every step was a necessary piece of a machine being built for a final purpose.
And here it is, the final prediction. The book says the bursting of what it calls the everything bubble won't cause the inflation everyone expects, but a massive great deflation. Asset prices will crash, making it impossible for people and companies to pay their debts. That triggers widespread failures, which flips a switch on the safe harbor provisions and the global collateral system, allowing that protected class to legally and automatically just sweep the board.
And that really brings us to the core, deeply disturbing question that the Great Taking leaves you with. It forces you to look at all the cracks and fragility in our financial system and ask a simple question. Are all these problems just bugs in the system? Or are they, as the author claims, features that were put there on purpose?